Give me your biggest surprises so far. It'd be multiple. Give me a team, players, narratives. What surprised you so far in this young season so far?
I mean, for me, probably the easy one would be Cleveland, just because they really didn't change a lot, except the coach. I mean,
Right,
and
of course.
that's why they're surprised, because it's not like they went out and added Jimmy Butler and a whole bunch of guys, and it's like, oh, I can see why they're so good. This is the same roster that basically was finagling to play the Magic in the first round just so they could win a series, and
Right.
barely even did that.
Yeah.
So the fact that they win pretty much every night, and they've got good wins on their ledger. It's not
Yeah.
like they're just beating also-rans, it's not like they're beating up on the Wizards every night. They've got some good wins to their credit. So, I mean, the fact that Kenny Atkinson has come in, he got a raw deal in Brooklyn. And also credit to him is that he waited for the right job, because he had a job lined up with Charlotte last year, which, as you can see from this year and all the previous years, is kind of a dumpster fire. And he pulled out of that job, and he waited one more year and took a job where you got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, whom he's familiar with, Evan Mobley, who's really taken the next step. And I think that's one of the big differences, that he's gotten a lot more out of Mobley than JB Bickerstaff did. Not that Bickerstaff is a bad coach, but I would say that Atkinson is optimizing their talents a little more, playing with more of that Brooklyn style, shoot a lot of threes, get out in transition. They're allowing Mobley to initiate the offense a little bit. He's not just standing in the corner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what they're doing is working. And so, the fact that they were barely winning a series last year, and now you can say, oh, by the time the season ends, they're going to be a top 4 team in the league. That's pretty surprising.
And
Also,
well, real quick on the Cleveland point, and yet, I'm still skeptical. Bigger picture,
sure.
Like when we get into April, do I still feel that Cleveland is going to be in the conference finals? Look, can they get there? Yeah, absolutely. There's a path. I still think with the surge of Milwaukee recently, New York is starting to get together a little bit now as of late. There's a lot of gelling. They got to work on that. I still think come April and May, you ask me right now, gun to my head, am I taking Cleveland, or New York? I'm leaning New York. If I'm taking Cleveland or Milwaukee, I might still go Milwaukee right now. Because I just don't know if what they're doing is going to sustain itself by the time we get to April and May.
Yeah, we'll find out if that translates. I mean, I'm also interested to see if they go out and add someone else. I mean, the interesting thing, and we'll probably touch on it later, is that there's 8 teams, and it could be more by the time the trade deadline comes, that are going to be in complete fire sale mode. I mean, they are going to be getting rid of any half-decent player on their roster because they want to lose games because this next NBA draft is so loaded. So, I mean, there's going to be the potential for some of these good teams to really load up. So a team like Cleveland could go out and get a Dorian Finney-Smith for probably not that much.
Right.
And just slide him right into the lineup. And it's like, oh, now we have a 3-and-D guy to help protect Mitchell, to help protect Garland a little bit. It allows you to play with one big on the floor. He could play the 4, he could play the 3. So, I mean, and that's probably only going to cost you a couple second-round picks and some salary. So, I mean, you might be able to get that done relatively easily. And again, not saying that's going to happen, but you go through every team, be it New Orleans, be it Washington, be it Brooklyn, Toronto. A lot of these teams are going to be open for business, and it's going to be a buyer's market. So they're not going to be overpaying. So teams that don't have a lot of assets to trade, they're going to be able to go out and add players. So I think what some of these teams look like now might not be what they look like later. So, I mean, Cleveland still has the potential to add somebody, even though they don't have a ton of assets. And the same could be said for any of the other teams that are contending, especially in the West. I mean,
right.
OKC could go out and add shooting. Memphis could go out and add shooting. I mean, they have assets to do it, and there are going to be teams that are looking to get rid of players because they want to lose games, because they want Dylan Harper, they want Ace Bailey, they want Cooper Flagg. So the only way to get that, I mean, you look at what the Nets did with Dennis Schroeder. They came out and it's like, oh, we're 10-13, we're a little too competitive. The last thing we want to do is wind up with the 10th pick and miss out on all these guys and get blown.
You want as many line balls as possible, man.
Exactly. Or a real catastrophe would be sneaking in as the 8th seed and then getting blown out by Boston in the first round. And now all of a sudden you don't have a shot at the top pick, and you also have no shot to contention. So, I mean, you see what these teams are doing. It's like, okay,
yeah,
Dennis Schroeder, you're playing a little too well. We're going to send you to a team that needs you, and we really need the ping pong balls more.
Right. Well, any other teams surprise you?
Yeah, Atlanta has surprised me a lot.
Yeah.
And not just because they beat the Knicks in the NBA Cup, but I look at the trade that they made with New Orleans, and this is going to kind of like mirror two teams, one a huge disappointment, one a big surprise. Like, you could look at the DeJounte Murray trade that Atlanta made getting DeJounte Murray as like a really bad trade. But the trade they made getting rid of him was probably one of the best trades of like the last 10 years. I mean, they got Dyson Daniels, whom I'd rather have just player versus player. Younger player, better defender, can fit in any system, is on his way to being a first team all defensive player.
So real quick, Atlanta is now 14-13, number 7 East currently right now as of recording. They won 7 last 10 games. They started the season up very slow, actually. So considering where they're at now after the slow start in October and November, I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they're going to win a title this year. Like, they're clearly not. I'm just saying that, like, you can see the path to them being really good in like 2 or 3 years. So like, they're already good now, and I'm not even counting Trae Young. Like, take Trae Young completely out of it. Like, Reece has looked pretty good, the number 1 overall pick. He's had his moments. I mean, he had a game against the Knicks where he scored over 30 points. So I mean, he's flashed. Dyson Daniels looks amazing, one of the best defenders in the league. They also got picks in that deal. So I mean, that's really what made that an amazing deal. Okongwu is still young on a really good contract. Jalen Johnson is a borderline all-star this year. And so, I mean, if you figure you have him for the next 8 years, that's a really good young nucleus of athletic, rangy defenders at the very least, who can then also play offense. And you've got a good coach in Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even taking Trae Young into account here. I'm just saying, you look at those 4 guys, that's a pretty impressive nucleus that they've got there. Maybe with some of those picks, maybe with a contract or 2, they go out, not this year, but in a year, in 2 years. And then that's when they go for it and try and infuse some talent in there with them to try.
So they obviously, are gonna they're also gonna take a chance on Trae Young, because by trading away DeJounte Murray last year or during the offseason, obviously that's your clue. They're gonna invest in Trae Young as the guy moving forward. I mean, I think Chris Snyder's a really good coach. I think Atlanta, it's hard to bring stars there, but they do have some pieces there, like you said, that they can build around and hopefully compete. Look, I think it'd be hard pressed on to see them winning the East, or you can go into these conference finals with, given where the conference at right now currently. But at least I give them a chance to at least compete in the middle of the pack, though.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't be like an Indiana of last year. Not saying they're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, but just that they could be a plucky playoff team and that could give another team trouble. I'm just saying that based on what the expectations have been the past number of years, where everyone thought that they were going to take a leap, they're going to take a leap. Now they finally get to a point where they are taking a leap when they had no expectations. I think that's pretty impressive and good on them.
Any other surprises?
Probably the Houston Rockets, I would say, just given that I figured that they'd probably be like a play-in caliber team, and so the fact that they're 3 in the West.
17-9 right now currently, won 6 last 10 games, playing good basketball. They're right in the middle of the pack. And I think, to your point as well, not so much the fact they weren't good enough, just the fact that the West is so damn deep.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could be a good team in the West and be 12 very easily. I mean, like, there's really only like Portland and Utah, and obviously, like, some teams will come off of that. They'll start to try and sell assets and move down a little bit. But I mean, it's not like the East where you've got like 6 teams that really don't want to be good at all.
Right.
In the West, you're going to have a team that's going to miss the play-in that had designs on making the playoffs and being somewhat decent. So, I mean, the West is so deep. The fact that Houston is 3 right now ahead of, teams like
the Nuggets, the Suns.
Nuggets, you go through it. Yeah, it's Ime Udoka has always been a good coach. I mean, obviously, what happened in Boston happened in Boston, but I mean, he's always gotten the most out of his players, and it's not like they've got some bona fide superstar. I mean, Şengün is very good. Jalen Green is good, albeit streaky. Fred VanVleet is a good game-managing point guard, very solid, and they've accumulated a lot of really good young players. I mean,
would you say Ime Udoka is right now the runaway coach of the year?
No, I'd say Kenny Atkinson is the runaway coach of the year.
Runaway. Ooh, okay.
I mean, right now, and I mean, that's not to say that can't change. I mean, you could also say Mark Daigneault in OKC. If OKC wins a very crowded Western Conference, I'd have a hard time taking it away from him.
Yeah. I'll tell you a surprise for me, actually. This might shock you a little bit. I think the Spurs being at 500 is still pretty shocking.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I looked at them before the season, and it's like, would this be a good year for them to just tank one more year? I know it's
Right.
hard when you have Wembanyama, but it's like, if you could be in the lottery one more year, you have Wembanyama, you have Devin Vassell, you get one of like the 10 players that's going to be really good. That's intriguing. Stephon Castle. I mean, you've got a lot of good young players. Could you get just one more? I don't know what Wembanyama's appetite was for that, but I mean, obviously, when they went out and got Chris Paul, it's like, okay, we want to be like a functional basketball team, and also the value behind that is like we want to show these young guys how to be
Chris,
pros, how to play.
Chris Paul's definitely a net positive to the team. This on maturity and just keeping things
Totally.
stabilized. But I thought with and I knew the Spurs would be improved by record, but not much because of the environment around them. But I think the fact they're 13, they're 500 now in mid-December. With all that's going on around them, and that's what also losing Popovich for health reasons for a while. Wemby's for some time, a little bit here and there, and they're still functional. I mean, I think that's pretty says a lot about. I think what you're going to see in the years to come is they're going to be a destination place now. People are going to want to play with Wemby now going forward. So I would say if you go into next year, like I wouldn't pick them this year to go to the playoffs or to play in because it's the environment. But if you're looking to next year going forward, and this just me not knowing the salary cap situation just yet, going to next year, this would be the team I've been watching to crack the not necessarily the top six. Oh, that could be possible, but definitely a serious playoff play-in team in the middle of the pack as teams like the Lakers are starting to whittle down with age and all that, and even the Warriors to some degree. I think the Spurs are the one team I think going to next year you look at that. Yeah, that's probably gonna be a playoff team next year.
Yeah, it's an attractive destination. I mean, you've got arguably the best player in the league for the next 5-10 years, and you've got no state taxes, and you've got a
Yep.
good culture, and like there's a lot there, and they've got good young players on the roster in addition to Wemby. I mean, again, Castle, Vassell. I mean, they have a good nucleus in place. Obviously, not to win now. It's kind of like the argument I was making with Atlanta. Like, I don't expect them to win a title this year, but from what the expectations were preseason to what they're doing now, it's pretty impressive.
All right. So this how about some disappointments now?
I mean, one for each conference. I mean, I sort of teased it a little bit before with New Orleans. I mean, I think they're far and away the worst or the biggest disappointment. Philadelphia definitely in the East, but I mean, that's more solely injury related. Whereas New Orleans, I mean, like I look at that as some like mismanagement too. I mean, like again, as I mentioned with the DeJounte Murray trade, I mean, it's too bad that he got hurt, but I mean, like you're giving up a lot of assets to get a guy who I think is a downgrade in terms of, like how does he fit next to CJ McCollum?
Right.
And also, I think this team was built with the idea that, oh, Zion's going to be healthy. And the guy has never been healthy for more than 2 consecutive weeks. So, I mean, they're in a situation where like 4 years ago, it's like they had all these assets. They had like a blank slate of team building, and you look at where they are now, and it's like Trey Murphy came back, didn't really make a huge difference. McCollum came back, didn't make a huge difference, and I don't know that Williamson is going to come back for more than a 2 or 3 week stretch at a time. I mean, I've always said that he's never been in shape to do it because you can't be 6'5", 6'6" and put that kind of force on your joints, on your extremities. It's just like a lot of weight to carry for a guy who plays an explosive game. It's not like Jokic, where Jokic might be overweight, but like he never really jumps more than like 6 inches off the ground. So
And he has control of his body. That's just for real. He's
totally like
he knows who he is.
Jokic like lumbers up and down the floor. I don't really. He's not playing like a violent, aggressive style of play where he's like diving into the stands or doing anything that's likely to get him injured.
Yeah.
And again, he's not jumping high enough to really step on someone's ankles. So I mean, it's with Zion being the same weight as Jokic, being like 6 inches shorter and playing like an explosive, like trampoline style game of high flying dunks and all that, pounding, going into the paint. I just don't know that he's ever going to stay healthy at his current playing weight, and he's going to have to lose 40 to 50 pounds because I don't know that you can be 280 and 6'5" or 6'6".
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know where their future goes from here.
Let me ask you this: if you're the Pelicans now, because obviously a lot of the talk coming to the year was okay, and sort of my end was okay. Let's see the first 20 games, 30 games, because obviously the Brandon Ingram situation, whether or not he'll be here, be long term, or they're going to trade him. They're last place right now in the Western Conference, so clearly, I think the obvious is the obvious. They're not going to probably keep Ingram forward. If you're the Pelicans, though, do you blow the whole damn thing up? Like you put Zion on the market, you put Brandon Ingram on the market, and start clean because they have a lot of pieces there. That a lot of pieces of players, the McCollums of the world who can help a contender like Cleveland, who can a guy like Murray who can help a contender. Zion will be a change. Obviously, injuries aside, if he goes to the right market, and of course he's happier and his weight's in check and all that, maybe he goes to the location and he's a better player somewhere else. And Brandon Ingram, another guy who can help a contender. If you're the Pelicans, do you just be done with this situation, or do you double down on this? Because they have the talent they have the requisite talent to be a competitive team. This year aside, they have shown that when they're healthy, they are a threat.
Yeah, short answer would be yes. I would blow it up to an extent. I read a report yesterday that said that the entire team was open for business except for Yves Missy, the rookie who's playing center, Herb Jones, and I believe it was Trey Murphy was the third guy. Basically, anybody else that's on their roster.
So being Zion too included?
Zion was not on that list. I think that they'd be open to trading him if they got a good deal, but I don't think that they'd give him away, and they probably shouldn't because it's like whether you keep him on his. I believe he's on a non-guaranteed deal at this point. So I don't know that it's a financial situation.
His deal is actually not that terrible when you think about it in comparison to other top players. Obviously baked in because of the fact that he can't stay healthy. But if I'm like a team like, I don't know, the Knicks, I'm just throwing the names out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or the Heat. Okay. Bring him into your culture. If you believe in your culture that you can bring him down here, get him in shape, especially Miami, of course, or even San Antonio, get him in shape.
I think a lot of teams are going to look at it and say, can we get him healthy? Are we going to give up assets for a guy who might never play? So, it's a real gamble. Like, it's a very, very risky move because you don't know that he's ever going to give you more than 30 or 40 games a season and that he's ever going to be healthy in the playoffs. So to give up assets, knowing you might not be getting an asset back, it's almost like Ben Simmons with the Nets. It's always been in theory. If he were healthy, he would be player X.
I think Simmons, right? I think the Simmons part, though, is more mental with him. With Zion, it's mental, I think, to a point, but you do see when he's on the court, the massive impact he has on that team when he's on the court. Look at 2 years ago when he was healthy, they were literally the 1 seed until he got hurt in December.
Totally. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, from a physical skills standpoint, a GM could talk their way into saying, if this guy were in my system, I could do this with him, regardless of what the reason is for the struggles. You look at Ben Simmons, what he did in Philadelphia, and you say, wow, if I put him around some shooters, this guy would be really great. And now we are 3 years down the line, and he's, even with the Nets, and you could say he's not gotten a softer landing spot in the league because they've basically, there's no pressure on him at all in Brooklyn. So for him to basically just be like,
brother, his NBA career could be done after this year.
Say it again.
His NBA career could be done after this year.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
I don't think any team touches him. Honestly, I don't see it.
Yeah, unless he's willing to pay for a play for like a
minimum
level, or a minimum or something along those lines. I could very easily see him playing in Australia or not at all. I don't know how much he loves the game to where he's going to put in the work to get to the level that he needs to be to earn another contract. And if he wants another contract, now's the time to do it because like the team you're playing on wants to lose games anyway. So you might as well go out there and start jacking up threes and throwing wild passes and running the floor and, playing at a high octane tempo because like there's no pressure. Like, again, last night they lost by 29 points and that was the goal. So, it's not like he's playing with any pressure on him to play well.
Right. Any other disappointments for you?
Philly. We didn't go into why Philly. Obviously Embiid. It's kind of the same thing as with Zion. It's just that like chronic knee injuries and, can a guy who's 7 feet tall and 280 and now in his 30s, like, is there just so much wear and tear on his body that he's not going to be able to consistently do it? Obviously, when he gets hit in the face and has a sinus fracture, that's just a fluke injury. But like the knee injuries are the concerning part.
And here's a problem. And here's a problem with them being in the hole they are now. Some teams like Milwaukee, you can expect Giannis to play at least 65 plus games a year. Yeah. So the hole, while it was big early in the year, you figure, okay, at some point they'll figure it out. They'll get out of the hole, which they've done. And they're doing just that. With Philadelphia, though, with their core guys, and I'm not going to include Maxey in this, although he got hurt early in the year. But with the Paul Georges and the Joel Embiids, the hole is too big, and for them to get out of the hole, they need to be available once they are available to play and stay healthy. And that's the problem. They don't stay healthy. So I think this hole is what it is now, and I think they might make the play in because the East is that bad on the bottom that they may just sneak to the play like they did last year. But beyond that, I just don't know. I mean, I said this with Paul George. It was a gamble to take a chance on him. And I'll say it again. The Joel Embiid thing, I think his window, I'll give it one more year. He's that good a player, but his window is small. And that's not because he's not good enough. I just think he does not take care of his body enough. I think the way he plays is not conducive to a long-term career. He's now 30. He's now 30, I think now.
Yep.
So, and for 30, his size and the way he plays, I look, Joel Embiid. I think the window is like maybe 2 years tops now.
Well, their success is hinging on two old players who are under contract for like a long time. I mean, like George and Embiid, they're not. It's not like a 1-2 year experiment. Like Paul George is going to be on your roster when he's 37 years old, making. He signed a 4-year, $212 million deal. So, I mean, he's going to be on your roster making that $52-53 million, and you're not going to be able to get out from under that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he's injured all the time, and, he's played fairly well when he's played, but, I mean, he's been injured.
That's the key, when he's played.
But I don't know that Maxey and Paul George, I mean, it's enough to beat the Wizards, the Nets, the teams that are, like, actively trying to lose, the Hornets. But, I mean, if you go as a play-in team, like even with Embiid, I don't know that being a 7 seed and having to rely on two old injury-prone guys is going to get you anywhere. And then the one thing I will say for Philadelphia, which is why I didn't rank them as big a disappointment as the Pelicans, is because they hit with Jared McCain. So I mean, he's been really good. I mean, I know he suffered a knee injury, not like an ACL or anything, but I mean like a sprained knee. So I mean. That is kind of a tough blow for them in what has already been an injury-riddled season. But I mean, you look at him and it's like, okay, we got a guy who could be part of our long-term process here, no pun intended. So you have Maxey, you have McCain. You can at least say, okay, if it doesn't work out with George and Embiid, we at least have ways to pivot into the next generation. With New Orleans, I don't really know where they go because the 3 guys that were untouchable, based on the report, Murphy is a good 3-and-D player, but he's not a star. At least he hasn't shown that capability yet. Herb Jones is an all-defense caliber player, but, I mean, he's not going to go out and score 35 points. And Missy is a rookie who, looks like a nice player, but, I mean, he's still a rookie center. So, I mean, like, I don't know that any of those guys are, like, dramatically changing your fortunes. And every other guy's a question mark. Ingram's a question mark. Williams is a question mark. I'm sure they'd trade DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum today if they could, but it's not the way the salary cap is structured. I don't know that it's going to be that easy for teams to make deals for high salary players. I mean, you look at a guy like Zach LaVine, like it's not easy to just cobble together $40 million in salary and make a trade. And so or like Jimmy Butler, that how do you make that trade work knowing that he's got $50 million a year? What good team just has $50 million a year lying around? Like the easy solution would be for a team like Brooklyn to say, okay, here's Ben Simmons' contract and picks, but it's like they don't want Jimmy Butler, at this stage. They want to lose and get a good draft pick. I don't know that teams like Golden State or Houston just have that money lying around. And that goes for like a lot of guys around the league. I mean, it's been theorized that you're going to have a lot of trouble moving guys that make more than like $25 million a year just because of the way the salary cap is structured. And with the first apron and the second apron and getting hard capped and having to take back an equal amount of money, it's going to be tough for a lot of teams to make trades in that sense. So from a New Orleans standpoint, I don't know how easy it's going to be for them to get off of a guy like a McCollum, even though I think he would make sense in a lot of different places. Does he make sense on a contender that also has the necessary salary to shed?
Well, the good news for Philadelphia is that they're only 2 game and a half back of the playing situation. Okay,
sure.
2 of those teams in the playing situation, I don't expect them to be there. Chicago and Detroit, especially in Chicago, if they're going to be selling players, before the deadline, Detroit, look, they're a young team. They're on the up and up, but I don't expect them to sustain this, but we'll see. So they have a chance to crack that top 10 to get in the play-in at least. But yeah, like I said, this window though, I mean, I guess they have the guys for 3 4 years by contract, but how effective will they be? Moving forward, and especially now with they have salaries that don't allow them to make as much effective moves to help around the edges when need be, especially with Boston being where they are and New York being where they are, and Cleveland now is really good, and even Milwaukee is back down to playing good basketball. So there's a lot of things there in Philadelphia to be concerned about long term. For me, disappointment for me, I'll say right now, my biggest disappointment for me, this is easy, the Kings. The Kings are a massive disappointment for me. They're right now number 12 in the West, one game under 500. I thought they would try to. I mean, look, I was really let down last year in the playoffs when they lost in the play-in to I think it was New Orleans, and I thought, okay, well, look, it happens. I get it. The West is it's competitive. I get it, but now where they're at currently, and look, things can turn around in the weeks to come. Obviously, the West Conference is very fluid, but to be right now 12 in the West right now with all that talent, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, I had a list of 4 teams. So it was the Pelicans, the Sixers, the Kings, and the Lakers.
Kings one is true. Okay.
Yeah, so I had the Kings on my list too. Mainly not just because they're not playing that well, but because I feel like they think they should be playing well, and they're going to throw good assets, throw good money after bad. So I feel like they're going to try and rush a move or two and make possibly a dumb trade to try and get to be like an 8 or a 9 seed. I think that they're going to double down on what they're doing, which probably isn't a good long-term strategy for them. So not only have they not been that great, but I think they might make it worse. So that's part of the reason why I have them as a disappointment.
So you say they better stay the course. Better to stay in the course and see if they can.
Yeah.
I mean, was the DeMar DeRozan move not a good move, you think?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know that he has really impacted a lot of winning in a lot of places that he goes. I mean, he's not like this incredible defender, and he can't shoot threes. So, I mean, all the damage that he's going to do is in the mid-range. And you have other guys who you're already relying on in crunch time, and Fox and Sabonis to get the ball. Mm-hmm. So if he's not doing other things, I don't know that he really makes a lot of sense there. Like, at least Malik Monk, can space the floor. So, like, he can hit a 3 from 30. So he's at least allowing Sabonis and Fox more room to operate. I don't know that DeRozan allows him more room to operate because he wants to play in the mid-range.
Right.
So, and he's not a great defender. I mean, like last night, they lost a game to the Nuggets, and it was a fascinating end of the game because like there were a little less than 3 minutes left, and the Kings were up by 8, and they wound up losing by 1. And it's like because they could not get a stop.
So they were up late because last night I went to the bar to watch the football games. And I turned on I had a League Pass on with my friends. We're watching football games. Of course, there was 2 games last night. And then I turned on the Nuggets game because the Kings, and the Kings were down, I think 20 or 22 in the first half. And then we left the bar after the games were over. I totally forgot about the game. It was like I said, not invested like heavily like I normally am. Went home to my wife, we had a conversation, whatever, and then we just forgot about the game. And all of a sudden I ran to check the game. And all of a sudden I see the Kings lost by only 1 point. I'm like, oh, they came back. Couldn't find out. You just said they were up by 8 actually in the fourth quarter. And I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, they are a big disappointment. Like I said, things can change in the weeks to come in the Western Conference. It's very fluid. But why the Lakers though? Also on your list.
Just because I think that their roster around AD and LeBron really isn't that good. So I don't see them being contenders. I mean, if anything, they should be one of those teams that's looking to like rebuild. Because I don't like Dalton Connect is a good player. I love that draft pick. But like outside of that, they're starting Max Christie. Austin Reeves is okay. Rui Hachimura is solid. But like I don't see a championship team there. I mean, you're probably looking at a play-in team. And it's like I feel like you're starting to see some aging from LeBron. I mean, obviously you've seen it over the years, but I mean, like if he's not playing every night and it's just Anthony Davis and then Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell and all that. I mean, the West is really good top to bottom. So it's like you're going to have a tough time staying above water. And so I don't know really where they go from where they are now, having like almost no assets.
they're in a situation where they are similar right now in 2024 to where they were surprisingly around the same time 10 years ago, post like late Kobe years, where they are somewhat competitive. Just before everything fell apart, but because they don't have enough assets to get better, and they have two guys taking up contracts, and LeBron, there's obviously the investment in LeBron because even though LeBron is 40 years old and still pretty good, but you're seeing a lot of the, you know, the old him looking old or whatever, he still draws seats to Staples. I still call Staples a record. That I think that there's an element of them feeling stuck with this because, well, yeah, we weren't that good, but you know what, business is still pretty good, and we're still selling games because LeBron's still in uniform, and I get all that, but they're in a very weird spot now to where they can get better, and for the future, they got two. Well, I say two, but really one. I think AD is the only really the other two guys that are you can realistically trade to a team and get back some really good parts for him. Because I think LeBron, look, LeBron's older and it is what it is with that one. He dictates where he goes, but they won't do it because of the situation. Like LeBron, you got to keep him happy also too. So they are in a very weird spot. But the thing is, the reason why I do somewhat agree with you to some degree is that that's a good roster. Actually, they actually have a good roster. Like they're competitive. They won 47 games last year. I think they won the same amount the year before that. In a conference that's relatively tough to crack 50. And they went to conference finals 2 years ago with the same roster, and they should be better than they are now, in my opinion. I agree with you on that.
It's a good roster if AD and LeBron are playing, but I mean, if LeBron's not playing, now it's not a good roster. And if AD, I mean, like I never expect AD to play 82 games. I mean, like he's
been healthy. He's been healthy though.
He has been healthy, but like, what if he's not healthy for a 2-week or 3-week stretch of time?
Yeah.
In the West, like that's tough. So I mean, like you've got two guys who have a lot of wear and tear on them, obviously for different reasons. LeBron is just a lot older, and AD's got a long injury history. Now, if you take one of those guys out of the equation, the West is so deep that it's like, I don't know that roster is going to carry you to anything more than a play-in team.
If that is the point, 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks we can look at the Kings in that spot. That was mentioned earlier.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm with you on that one, man. I think the Lakers are a little disappointing. They started well when the year started. I still think Redick's the right guy. I think Redick's doing a good job there overall. I just think that the situation is just hard to navigate when you have guys that just are missing time. It is.
And maybe Redick would be better suited for a team that was like totally young, like all young players that he could like implement a culture and a style of play, etc. But like I feel like he got the job because he and LeBron are friends and they had a podcast together. So
of course.